They must be serving very good food because look how long the line is.
For those who wish to take the test.
Are you miserable?
Yeah.
Hey everybody, I just got back from the Pyeongchang Olympics. This was my second Olympics. I went in 1996 to the Atlanta Olympics, and that was the thrill of a lifetime. It was massive. There were stars all over the place. The world was there. The thing I remember was it was very, very crowded there at the Atlanta Olympics. However, despite the crowding, it was still a great time. All the venues that I attended, at least, were very full with thousands and thousands of people. And of course, Atlanta has the Hartsfield Airport, which is one of the world's busiest airports. So it really is a travel center of the world, and you felt like you were at the center of the world when you attended that Olympics. However, I'm being asked, how was the Pyeongchang Olympics? And I really don't know how to answer this one because, well, it was different. It was really different. And there was like 14 things that I saw that you should never see at the Olympics. Okay? And the first one is that Olympic nations cannot abdicate their duties as a host because you have a national holiday. But this was exactly what had happened. CBC had an article that had a quote in there, who in their right mind says, let's put the Olympics in the same window as the Lunar New Year. It was crazy. Basically, that whole area of South Korea went home for the holiday and left the world fending for themselves at the Olympic site. It was a disaster.
The express train designed to take Olympic athletes, supporters, and fans to the Winter Games is up and running. On it, you get to Gangneung from the capital in just a couple of hours. Lee Ji-won explains why KTX Gyeonggang line is an historic step forward for the nation's rail network.
The second thing that was wrong is that you cannot base an Olympic bid on misrepresentations, but that's what happened. This bid to host the Olympics by Pyeongchang was predicated on them getting a train that would shuttle the spectators back and forth from their hotels in Seoul to Pyeongchang Mountains and the coast. However, they shut the service down basically, and they did not allow foreigners to buy tickets on this train, and so there was no way to get to these games from February 14th to the 18th. The Wall Street Journal declared that it was like a war trying to get tickets during this time period because the train tickets were so scarce for foreigners and Olympic visitors. The third thing that went wrong was that the travel times were much higher than advertised.
When the high-speed train is completed in 2017, visitors can reach Pyeongchang in only 68 minutes from Incheon International Airport.
We were told it would take 90 minutes to 2 hours to get from our hotel in Seoul to the events. It wasn't that at all. First of all, you couldn't get a train out of Seoul, so you had to go to a train station on the east side of Seoul, and which meant you had to take the subway about an hour. It was about an hour ride subway to get to the train station. Then from there, you did ride the train for about an hour and a half. However, once you reach your destination, you then had to wait a half hour for the shuttle bus. Then it took another 30 minutes to ride the shuttle bus to the event. And then once you were at the event, you normally had to hike another 30 minutes up a mountain to get to the event. And then the return was even worse because you were frozen waiting sometimes as much as 30 minutes to an hour for the shuttle bus to pick you up to go back to the train station. And then the train station usually didn't get you back to Seoul till very late at night. And then you'd have to wait for another half hour to find a taxi because the subway and the buses had stopped running. And so there you are at 2, 3, or 4 o'clock in the morning trying to find a taxi and negotiate a taxi ride across town back to your hotel, which took like an hour of negotiating. And by the time you got done with everything, you were back to your hotel room by 4 or 5 in the morning. This was not the 90-minute trip that was advertised. The fourth thing that went wrong was that the shuttle buses were not always readily available to deliver people to the games. And often the wait was way too long. One of the biggest problems was this was an Olympic Games based on public transportation. The idea of hosting them had to be done with public transportation. However, buses and the subways would shut down by the time the events would end. The events always ended very late for television back home in the United States or Canada. So you had to have the events end very late, and then you had to go get a taxi to get back to your hotel if you were going to make it. The problem was there often wasn't enough taxis. The taxis were non-existent or very sparse, and you found yourself having to wait in a line for maybe an hour late at night, 1 o'clock in the morning, when temperatures were minus 15.
Are you miserable?
Yeah.
The sixth thing that went wrong was that taxis and hotels were exploiting the Olympic visitors. I heard stories that taxi drivers were charging way above the metered rates, and if you didn't pay it, you'd be stranded. Very bad stuff. What happened to me with my hotel, the K Motel on the coast there in Gwangnam, is that they took my reservation on Priceline. They saw they had the reservation on Priceline, but then they said, well, if you want your room tonight, you're going to have to pay an extra 150,000 won above the reservation you made, or else you'll be homeless tonight. No hotel room key for you. The seventh thing, as a result of all this exploitation of the Olympic visitors, the visitors were having to go homeless. I'm not making this up. Homeless. They are forcing people to be homeless because they were so incompetent with their planning. The eighth thing that went wrong was there was not food and beverage there at the Olympic Games on February the 16th. Apparently, all the providers and the vendors and the staff just went home and left the people to fend for themselves. So you had to stuff candy bars down your underwear to get through security to try to get to the games and to keep yourself fed and sustain yourself through the day. Otherwise, you were going to starve to death. The only thing they were selling apparently was beer. What do you do if you have an 8-year-old kid with you? The ninth thing that went wrong was there was very little planning to assist the handicapped and to help the elderly get to these events. I didn't see anybody who was elderly or handicapped getting around at these events. I don't think anybody had enough foresight to plan and to care about this. The 10th thing that was wrong was there were so many empty seats. I've been to minor league baseball games that had a lot more people than the semifinal hockey game. I mean, this is ridiculous. You're one match away from playing for the gold medal, and you can't even find 4,000 fans to fill a 10,000 seat arena. It was ridiculous. It felt like a minor league event. It did not feel like the Olympics. My understanding is there's not a huge sports interest there in Pyeongchang. This is one of the poor areas of South Korea. They were looking at the Olympics to boost themselves financially, and they really weren't sports enthusiasts driving this bid to host the Olympics. The other thing that went wrong, number 11, was that people who ordered tickets for will call to be picked up at the event at Gingdong on February 16th, they could not do it. They were told to get in a line that went for eternity. So there was no way to pick up will call tickets in a timely manner and get to your event on time. I saw people coming into the events with only 10 minutes left in the hockey game. Imagine this. The 12th thing that went wrong at these games was that those who wanted to buy tickets could not buy tickets in spite of many seats being available. They were told to wait in the same long, exhaustive line. They did not have the staff to sell the tickets to the people, and they needed to sell the tickets. The 13th thing that was wrong with these Olympic Games was they had a bait and switch scam where they would tell you that the less expensive seats had already been sold. But then when you got to the arena, you found, no, they were available in the thousands. But they insisted on selling you the $200 seat so that wouldn't go empty, even though you wanted to buy the $60 seat for the same game. But they would tell you it's all sold out when it was not sold out. This type of a switch and bait scam should never happen at the Olympics. This brings us to number 14. There have been articles about how the organizers have been giving away the seats that were available to the students, to the volunteers, and to soldiers, which I think is a great thing. However, when I bought my semifinal ticket for the United States hockey semifinal game, I spent $200 and I found a busload of Chinese villagers occupying my section and my seat where I had bought a ticket to sit. You could put those people anywhere in the arena and you're going to put them in the $200 seats? This was so ironic because after the game they would go and line up behind a Chinese tourist company flag. They had not paid for the seats because they got up and all left after one period, so there was no way they knew what was going on. They tried to record the whole game on their cell phones for the one period of hockey that they were there. This was not advertised in China. I know because I live and work in China, and there was no such offerings around. So something was done under the table to give away these seats to Chinese villagers to make the arena look like it was full. Meanwhile, people who really cared about hockey, really cared about sport, we were being told to wait in long lines so we couldn't get through to the events, or else we had to deal with finding a seat that a Chinese villager was not occupying. I think the saddest thing about these Pyeongchang Games is that I know that South Korea has the expertise and the ability to run a great games. I've seen the way they run their professional baseball, the KBO, and they often will see crowds 8 times larger than we're at the Pyeongchang Olympic Games events. And the ticketing is very efficient, and it's a very fun experience to be at the games. And they know how to get the guests right to their seat. They know how to do everything perfectly. It's a shame that what was learned in the KBO could not have been brought over to the Olympics, because they do have the expertise to do this and to do it right in Korea. And I wish they would have relied on some of their private resources more. And I think they would have had a lot more successful Olympic Games there in Pyeongchang had they got the contributions of their very successful sports organizations like the KBO. However, I just want to say that the Pyeongchang volunteers were fantastic. They always tried to do the right thing. They were always courteous. They went into this wanting to do the best thing for their country, for the Olympics, and they really did a super job. It's just a shame that they had such a terrible organization directing them and kind of tainting their wonderful efforts. I wouldn't be surprised if there's lawsuits in the near future. I mean, because these things that happen were pretty bad, and as years go by, more information is going to come out as to what went wrong and who was responsible for it to go wrong. So I wouldn't be surprised if a lot more information comes out in the upcoming months or years. As for me, I'd planned to be at the Olympics for 7 days and attend 7 days worth of events. But because there were so many logistical nightmares with the ticketing, with the transportation, I only made it to 3 days of events, and that was it. So I really lost out. I'm hoping to go back in 2022 in Beijing, and hopefully most of these problems are worked out, and we don't have to deal with these kind of problems. And hopefully it's a much better Winter Olympics in 2022. I hope you learned a lot about what it was like to be a spectator in Pyeongchang. And I hope that you've enjoyed it. And until next time, goodbye.
Kani, 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 Kani.